Well, I'm back and I read a disgusting book. Disgusting. And I'm here to tell you about how much I loved it. See, fooled ya. You thought this was going to be a rant where I was like, this book is so gross, it shouldn't exist. I'm Jenny Trout. I'm a big ol' hater. No, this is not a hating on this book video. This is a, I kind of hate this book, but just because I'm still thinking about it and because it's like the only horror book that I can think of that has given me a nightmare. It's disgusting. I'm going to start right off the bat with a content warning list. This is not from the book. This is just from my reading experience, okay? And I'm going to say the first one, necrophilia. And I have probably bleeped that out, but it's something that you do with a dead body. All right, now, after that point, after I say the big one, right, the other ones are not going to seem so out there. Suicide, infant loss, spousal abuse, gore, violence, all of those things. But you're probably still hung up on the big one. The book is Motel Styx by Michelle von Eschen and Jonathan Butcher. I practiced that. I sat here and I practiced it, but I am fully zooted. I have to be honest, to get on a YouTube video, especially after as long as I've been gone from YouTube, like my big, long, weird, I don't want to see myself on camera freak out break. I can't believe the one I'm coming back with is the one where people do things to dead bodies. I'm a morbid person. I'm obsessed with death. I have bones and dead things all over my house. When I did go to college, it was for pre-mortuary science. I am fine with death and I am drawn to death, and I do attribute that to being raised Catholic in part, but for the most part it's just I'm a very morbid person. So when I heard the premise of this book, immediately I was like, I have to check it out. And the only thing that I heard about this book, I didn't even read the blurb or anything. It was just someone on TikTok was talking about it being a weird book. And the way they described it was that it is set in a time when the recreational use of corpses has been legalized. And this man is trying to get his wife's body out of a hotel that services people who like to do those recreational things. I checked it out just because it sounded gross, it sounded shocking, it sounded gory. There were people who were like, oh, that book made me throw up. I was like, you know what, that sounds like exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. So I download the book. Well, first I read the sample, and then immediately I'm like, smash, I'm buying it. I stayed up almost all night reading this book, and then I had a nightmare about this book. And then I woke up and had to finish reading the book, even though I was sick to my stomach like 80% of the time. I'm gonna try to give a really light little overview here for people who want to read the book and not be spoiled, and then I will tell you spoilers, okay? So without any spoilers, this is what I can tell you about the story. A man has recently lost his wife, and she donated her body to this necrotel for philiacs to be able to do stuff to it. And he had no prior knowledge that this was going to happen. He wants to get to this hotel, this Motel Styx, before anyone can like violate her corpse. The thing is, this hotel's very expensive, it's very exclusive, and they're not going to want someone from the outside coming in looking for their loved one. So he is having to go sort of undercover with a contact he has made at the hotel, this woman that works at the hotel. She has a whole bunch of different names. She's always putting on different name tags and stuff and working different little jobs. He's also afraid of running afoul of these people because, I mean, put yourself in his shoes, right? This is a business where people pay to go have sex with dead bodies. That is a weird thing. You could maybe uncharitably assume that that means everybody at the hotel is a bunch of violent weirdos. Now, there are some violent weirdos at the hotel. There is Mr. Yamamoto, who is a guy who prefers to go into the wet rooms where he has bodies that he can cut up and do really graphically described disgusting things to the bodies. Another person that's there at the hotel is, I think it said if I remember correctly, he was a mortuary worker, and he likes to get like the nastiest, most decomposing, juiciest bodies. And like, I'm not going to describe it for you because I almost threw up. It was very descriptive in the olfactory sense. There's also a side character that's a little old woman, and it's very sad that she comes and stays for a few months with a body that she's picked out, and she names after her husband. So she picks out a man about her husband's age. She names him Alfred. She wheels him around the whole hotel, takes him to the bar, keeps him in her room in bed with her, is constantly like putting ice around these Alfreds to make them last longer. A really cool choice that the authors made for this book is the way that they have inserted things like Yelp reviews and quotes from psychological journals and little clippings, like news clipping type things of like when the Lazarus Act was first being passed, and how we kind of got started on this road. So that was really interesting. They've also worked in stuff about a real life necrophile. Her name was Karen Greenlee. You can look her up. It's kind of an interesting and sad thing, but they worked that in there. So I'm like, these are people who, as authors, actually went out and got involved in that part of the death community. I'm not saying that they are necrophiliacs. What I'm saying is that they clearly have done research around, you know, death-related stuff, death-related pop culture, and stuff of that nature, because I recognized that. I was like, oh yeah, they made that movie about her, Kissed or whatever. And I thought that's probably not something most people know about, right? So I feel like these authors have a unique interest in death, and they were out there actually doing the work to like world build. Now, talking of world building, I felt like the rules of the hotel did not stay consistent and clear all the time, right? One of the things was that like Ellis, the protagonist, when he fills out his fake profile to get into the club, he's going there as like a VIP, like spending a ton of money, like he is their number one, you know, most important client, right? And he fills out his preferences on a form, and at one point tells the owner that he is more interested in bodies that are slightly damaged. And all the bodies he gets are like perfect looking. And I thought, you know, if you're trying not to get caught, you should be complaining about that. You should be like, hey, she's not beat up looking enough. Hey, this one isn't bruised enough. This one, you know, doesn't have missing skin or whatever. Like, it was just weird to me that the owner of this place that's under such scrutiny, that didn't stay consistent, that he wasn't suspected right off the bat when he was getting the wrong thing. Another thing that felt a little bit inconsistent in terms of just general corpsery was that all the bodies had to be embalmed, but there was the guy that liked the real squishy ones. And the guy who liked the real squishy ones, how do I put this? The description was not that of what you could expect from an embalmed body. He did not describe certain things about the body that would indicate that it had been embalmed. But we had just heard in, like, you know, a chapter or two before that they all have to be embalmed because these bodies are big money makers. A part of me wonders if the thing about the owner saying that all the bodies have to look great and they all have to be embalmed and he turns away all the imperfect ones, a part of me wonders if that was supposed to be a clue to the reader. There were a lot of places that there were clues. I knew how this book was going to turn out when, about 30% into it. I didn't care, though, that I saw where it was going. I was like, I know exactly how this is ending. I just need to know how. And I was only slightly wrong about the ending. which if you are like, I am never reading this book, but I gotta know how it ends, stick around. We're gonna talk about it with spoilers right after everybody else leaves. That's your cue if you don't want spoilers. There's a link to the book in the description. So if you want to read it and you don't want spoilers, you should click that link now and then not watch the end of this video. Here it is with spoilers. I'm going to spoil the whole book for you. So if you're like, I cannot handle that book, but I'm kind of morbidly curious about what happens in it. Here's what happens. We go with Ellis to the Motel Styx. He sees stuff, horrifying stuff there. And one of those things is that there's another guest, the Mr. Yamamoto that I described before, who really enjoys cutting up bodies. So when I was reading it the first time, they go into this room. Mr. Yamamoto's like, I want to show you what I'm doing in here. And he takes him into the wet room and there's blood everywhere. And I was like, that's weird that there would be blood everywhere, because they just said that all these bodies were embalmed. So he's cutting up these bodies. Like, where's that? And where's the blood coming from? Like, corpses don't bleed. Like, what's the blood, right? Then very shortly after that, you find out that the hotel also has this service that they do where they will drug people so that they are like corpses, so that their lover can, you know, like if somebody's like, hey, I want to have sex with a dead body, but I don't want to cheat on my living partner, their living partner takes the drug and it's as if they are dead. So when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, they're drugging people and letting Mr. Yamamoto do this stuff to them in the wet room. Like, got it. But when I first read it, I was like, that's wrong. Also, just because I do read a lot of horror, I kind of knew the second that drug was introduced, I'm like, okay, that's how this dude's gonna die. Like, that's how the protagonist is going to die. He's going to get that drug and somebody's going to do something to him. I thought it would be Mr. Yamamoto. I thought Mr. Yamamoto would, you know, they'd drug him and give him to Mr. Yamamoto. But instead, that is not how it works out. And I won't go super spoiler heavy because, again, you might still be like, I might be 100% in, right? Does he find his wife's body? Absolutely, he finds his wife's body. And by the time he does, you are not rooting for him to do so. I don't know that I was ever rooting for him to find his body. It was her wish was to go to this place. But he, as the book goes along, Ellis is very obsessed with getting Emily back. And it goes from, I don't want anyone to defile her corpse, to it very clearly being that he was an abusive spouse and he's not going to let anybody have her. Like, that she has done this and given her body away to escape him, and has done it as a big fuck you of like, you know, I'm giving my body away to these other men, right? And that's why he goes after her. It has nothing to do with like, I love her and I whatever. It's legitimately that he just is an abuser and he won't let her go. So what happens to him at the end of the book is richly deserved. It was fantastic. It was disgusting. It is going to stick with me for a long time. It was wonderful. I wish I hadn't read it. And I think that that is really the mark of the best possible kind of horror, where you're like, oh, that was so good. I wish I hadn't fucking read it, because it's gonna haunt me forever. And it really is. It is haunting. It is a haunting book. You're gonna think about it if you go read it. So it was fantastic. And I think that's just about all I have to say about that. Hopefully you'll be able to get some more videos from me coming up soon. I don't know what happened. I got like a weird stage fright. I stopped making videos. Even sitting down tonight, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm like freaking out. I'm like freaking out. I'm freaking out. But I shouldn't have been freaking out. It's just, it's a camera. I can edit it. I can do whatever I want, right? The book is Motel Styx by Michelle von Eschen and Jonathan Butcher. If you got a strong stomach and you're into death, it's worth a read. Since the last time that we had a video on this channel, I had a new book come out. It's called Her Brother's Billionaire Best Friend. If you liked my boss books, you will probably like these books. They are a much higher spice level, I would say, than the Boss books, but it's still like the age gap dynamic with the added like forbidden element of it being her brother's best friend. I really love this book, and this is the first in a series. I absolutely love this series. I love these characters. There are so many silly situations. It is not as heavy as the Boss series. So it's like more spice, less angst, very fun. Just if you want to check it out, there's a link down below. Also, we are reading Icebreaker over on Patreon for the Jealous Patrons AV Club, and keep a lookout. We're going to start, instead of the Jealous Haters AV Club, which is what I had been calling the those recaps of the Mister, I've decided to do something different with our next selection, and I'm going to be calling it Jenny Tries to Like This. And the reason I'm saying that is because we'll be reading Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver, which was a book that I didn't really have a problem with. I just didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to, and I DNF'd it. So I'm going to be giving that book a second try, and it just doesn't seem fair to call it the Jealous Haters Club because I might actually like it. So it's going to be called Jenny Tries to Like This, and that will be our next selection that will be rocking up here. So yeah, check out the Patreon, check out my new book, and I will catch you on the flip side.